All right, so here are the main parts cut out and edge glued and everything. And I started with the bottom, put on some glue. When I'm done with this, I think the glue is a little heavy. I probably shouldn't have put on that much, but it worked. I test fit everything, of course, beforehand. A little glue on that back part. There's a slot and it fits right around the tail skid. And it really makes a nice way to sort of register everything. So slid that in and then really just made sure the front was lined up as far forward as I thought it should go, up near the bulkhead there and around that little scoop area that's going to be next. And then I should use my fingers to make sure everything is down and make sure things are even. You kind of pinch between your fingers along the sides to make sure it's along the, in the right place, not crooked. And I thought I'd have to trim stuff, but I didn't. It fit perfectly to the balsa. Now there's that piece that goes underneath, that little scoop. Very characteristic of the Sopwiths. I pre-bent it a little, and then I realized I better just give a little Sharpie silver around the edges just in case things don't match up. Turns out it matched up pretty well. Added a little glue, and the critical point on this really is that piece where the glue is right now. The piece in the front where the bulkhead is, because that's this little swoop that has to be connected. The part I'm doing right there can sort of be finessed. Even if it's a little proud, you can sand it back and then touch it up with paint or something. So the important part to me was to try to get the little curve at the bottom stuck to the bulkhead. So I found it easier to start anyway with some tweezers and just use my fat finger to make um, the correct concave shape and just try to make sure it's kind of even. Had to reposition it a couple of times, but ultimately it went in just fine and fit pretty dang well. It wasn't perfect, but it's good enough, and you're not going to hold the airplane upside down constantly anyway. So I wasn't too upset. But there it is together and squished down. Uh, and the whole bottom looks nice. And again, I didn't have to trim anything on the edges, which surprised me. I thought I'd at least have to sand, but I didn't. So the next part I started with was the sides. They're kind of fun because they really start to make it look cool. That notch down there fits over the component where the spar is going to go on the lower wing. So that's a good place to sort of match it up. And there it is. As usual with this kit so far, boy, you matched it up and everything else matched perfectly. The contour of the fuselage was great. Pre-rounded a little bit of the front that goes around the cowling bulkhead in the front just to make sure that it'll fit nicely. Added a little glue around everything. Uh, and you probably should use a toothpick or something, but I tend to just put it on. If I can get the glue tip in there, I do that. And then I go by with my fingers and sort of smash it in and get off excess. That tends to be how I do it. But I did this all around the edge and on the two former verticals on back there. I didn't do the vertical part of the where the tail, where the rudder's going to go, because I just want to let it doesn't matter, and I'm just going to wait and see what I have to do back there. I'm not quite sure. But there I'm just kind of dabbing off excess glue. Now the danger with doing that is now you have glue on your finger, so you have to be careful when you start touching stuff. That's another reason to coat the parts with a clear varnish before you start, because the glue won't stick as well. And it kind of rubs off pretty easy. But here I am matching up that little slot in the hole, and then it's just a matter of making sure things are straight. And again, surprise, surprise, um, the thickness of the skin um, along the vertical part of the fuselage was perfect. I mean, I didn't need to trim anything. It looked really good. And then up there, it takes a little bit of work because you're squeezing around a corner, around a curve. But with that tacky glue, you basically get it in place and hold it, and it starts to grab pretty fast. It makes it really handy for making these things. And then you just sort of make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. In this case, everything worked well. It was straight, but I did need to put a little extra glue along that part and then squeeze it with my fingers just to shut it down and get it in there. But again, if you do that and it looks good, you don't want to crimp anything, but as long as it looks good and give it a few rubs like that, it's clean. So there she is, and I really like the way the wood looks. It looks really cool. It's a well rendered model. So off camera, I did the other side, same way, just to show you that that's it's easy to do. But then I got both sides on, and now it's on to the top. And I noticed that there was a little bit of openings, or not openings. I wanted to give that a little bit of color, just in case this piece didn't fit. Now this has a little piece, there's two pieces that have a rectangular strip that go on them. Thing is, I have a feeling I glued them on like this, and they're not curved, which is more typical. And after looking at the camera here, I'm thinking I probably was supposed to glue them directly to the former, like that. And then they acted as the tab for glue purchase. Putting them on the paper first was kind of probably a dumb idea. Anyway, that's the way I did it. This is the only part that didn't fit that well. It curled over nice. What I should have done, though, is probably taken a tiny, tiny bit, like a 72nd of an inch or something, off of one side, because it did lip and overhang on that side, on the side looking towards the camera. However, what I was able to do, and I've done this before, is just sand it back a little bit. The paper, it is basically wood, right? So it sands back. You just got to be careful you don't destroy the stuff underneath, because I don't want to have to repaint my roundels and stuff. I just sanded it back a smidge, recolored it, and you can barely tell it's there. But that's a mistake on my part. I should have cut that, and it probably would have fit that much better, just a tiny bit. There I am putting this piece on again, probably incorrectly, for the turtle deck wood part. It worked. It's just that after I did it, I realized I've done enough of these. I should know. When you put on a tab like that, usually it's curved and it follows the. So I have a feeling it was again supposed to go on the actual former. Rounded this one over, and I like this part because I guess the gas tank, maybe a oil tank, or certainly a gas tank back there. I think the pilot sat on top of a gas tank, I think, or it was really close to him. Put a little glue around the edges, being careful. But again, this glue dries clear, so again, it's very user-friendly, which is handy. This piece fit better than the turtle deck. It fit on the edge like that. I rolled it around, and it came up and perfectly matched the other edge. There was no sanding, there was no cutting, no nothing. So again, it was a joy to work with, and it's nice when the model makes you look good. The designers, the computer people, whoever did a nice job. Put your fingers along there, put a little pressure, light pressure, that helps the glue sort of start to set and stick. And this is a little hint. If you had a part here that was a little open and had like a gap, it looked like a gap, if you put a little excess glue in there, that tacky glue, and kind of smush it in place like you're going to fill it with primer or with a filler, and then rub it back with your thumb or your finger. You do it a few times and it disappears, and it fills the gap. I don't know if it's because maybe the light then hits it differently, but it can basically make a gap disappear, or pretty close to it. I learned that on a Holinsky P40 one time. Had a gap around something, and wow, it made it look much better anyway. I think it's a trick of the light, but I'm not complaining. This last part was fiddly. It fit very well, but it was just fiddly. Put glue around the edges, and I made sure I put glue on those sides of those formers up front. And this one's hard to put on. Not really difficult, but it's a little hard just because it's very floppy, and you've got pieces cut out of it already, of course. I suppose you could have left it whole before you cut out the cockpit, and it would roll on a little easier. But I figured then it's hard to actually cut out the cockpit when it's in situ on the little model. So I just lined up the edges, and I also made sure that the metal components on the cowling, on the front of the airplane, and on this top piece, this decking, matched up. And I'll show you that. They matched up perfectly. I want to say it's because I did such an amazing job, but I have a feeling it's just the model. But there it is on there, making sure that they're up against those formers there where the machine guns are going to go, where you get your camel hump pretty soon. But you can see that it looks really good. And again, the coloring is such that I like to paint my wood. I usually paint like a light tan, and then I streak it with brown, and I hit it with clear orange or clear yellow when I'm airbrushing plastics and stuff. and it looks kind of like this. But this looks really nice. I have to say, this looks like wood. Um, there's the part that lined up absolutely perfectly. I made sure that was lined up. My little chutes are going to line up, openings where I guess the spent casings would come out. Are going to line up with machine guns well. Um, but that looks pretty good. Tail skid needed to be cut on the cut out on the other side, so I just cut out the little piece and then just glued it to the other side. Simply glued it. That's a weak part on the kit in that it's just, in my case, balsa, and I have squashed it a couple of times. I might reinforce it either with wire or just with a little super glue. That would stiffen it up really well. Um, Once its model's done, it's fine, but when you're flying it around the room and playing with it, you might damage the skid. We'll see if it lasts. But there she is. The whole piece is really done. Again, some detail on the inside I want to do. I think I'm going to make the machine guns because that front part has to be finished, and that's going to be maybe tricky. I can't tell, but wow, it looks nice. And again, the wood looks great. I'm glad I chose this one rather than Brown's. Brown's airplane because I do like the wood on there. Anyway, turning out really slick so far.